I think it's clear the Pittsburgh Steelers are all in on 2025, which means trading TJ Watt would be insane. That and more in today's edition of Locked On NFL.
The new Locked On NFL. The madman Tyler Rowland is your double shot of NFL espresso with the Locked On local experts on every major story. Get ready, Rowland is revving up. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Football fans, welcome in to the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with help from our local experts that know your favorite teams like no one else. I am your host, the madman, Tyler Rowland, joined today by Locked On NFL expert, the brain, Luke Braun. On today's episode, we're going to look at the comeback from Darren Waller. The rapper is back in the NFL. We're going to talk about some landing spots if TJ Watt is traded. But first, we're going to talk about the Steelers' overall approach to this offseason. I think it's clear they're going all in. Now, before we dive into it, I do want to thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen each and every day, and for being an everydayer here with us at the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Luke, I said on yesterday's show after we saw this trade of Jalen Ramsey, Minkah Fitzpatrick, Jonnu Smith, the big deal, that it's obvious to me the Steelers are going all in 2025. But my guy Chris Carter from Locked On Steelers, he doesn't agree with that.
But this notion that this move, and the getting Aaron Rodgers and trading for DK Metcalf, that the Steelers are now quote unquote all in on the season. The Steelers do want to win. Like, there's no doubt in my mind they want to win this season, and but just as much as they always want to win every season. I don't think anything's changed there. But where people are saying all in to me does not mean just making something. They would be all in if they traded a second round pick or a third round pick for Jalen Ramsey, and instead of Minkah Fitzpatrick, and now Minkah Fitzpatrick was still with the team. And if they didn't get a third round pick for George Pickens, if he was still on the team, the all in would be saying, hey, we're amassing every piece of talent for right now. And we are saying we don't care about the 2026 NFL draft. We don't care about trading up for a quarterback next year. It is win now with Aaron Rodgers. That would be all in. But that's not what they've done. When you look at what they've done when you look at the additions of the older players they brought in, Aaron Rodgers, DK Metcalf, Darius Slay, Jalen Ramsey, Jonnu Smith, all those players, they gave up a 2025 second round pick. They gave up Minkah Fitzpatrick, and they gave a 2027 fifth round pick. And they got a pick back for that. And in giving away George Pickens, they got back a third round pick for 2026. That is not all in on the 2025 season. All in would be the way the Rams approached their era in the NFL. When you look back at their history, the Rams were a team that when you go back and you look at how they handled the draft for 7 straight years, the Rams did not have a first round pick. That is going all in, and they cashed in. Aaron Donald got a Super Bowl ring. Matt Stafford came to town. That is going all in.
Okay, now I will say, Chris is right. The Steelers have not gone all in the same fashion that the Rams have. But to me, it's about opportunity cost. That's what we're talking about here. Every snap that you play Aaron Rodgers, you're not playing a younger quarterback like Will Howard. Every snap that you give to a player like Jalen Ramsey when you trade him away for Minkah Fitzpatrick, who's years younger than him and cheaper than him, you're going with older players. Everything that they've done this offseason has been, hey, we're going to migrate to older players. And older players have less of a long-term impact on your team than younger players. That's just obvious. You know, Jalen Ramsey doesn't have the ability to impact the Steelers at a high level as long as Minkah Fitzpatrick could have. George Pickens to DK Metcalf, still young, but just saying, like, Aaron Rodgers compared to a younger quarterback like Justin Fields. To me, it's the opportunity cost of, it's not just, hey, we didn't give everything away, but what you preferred over what you could have had is going to leave you in the same exact place. So they're trying to have it. They're going all in on Aaron Rodgers and all these veterans and all these older players, and they're going to end up in the same exact place that they have been without these guys, just with less young talent on their roster Like, it's just absurd to me to act like the Steelers haven't pushed their chips all in for this year. And whether or not you think that's good or that's bad, to me, it's not debatable that the Steelers are going all in because they are clearly preferring older players to young players. They're giving more opportunities to older players instead of younger players, which shows me that the Steelers don't think they need to take a step back to get their next quarterback. They don't even care. So they're just going to keep running in place in some people's minds. So like I said, whether you agree with what they've done or not, it's obvious to me that this is all in for the Steelers. But for whether this was right or wrong, if you want to talk about that, Luke, you let us know how you feel there.
I don't know what it is about Aaron Rodgers and now the Steelers as a whole that makes me feel like I'm constantly taking crazy pills. What are everybody talking about them? This is a catastrophe team. They lost way more than they have gained this offseason. And I hear you that they're older, right? I don't know if all in is the right word for this. They have 12 draft picks next year. They could have traded some of those if they were really going all in. They're projected to have over $100 million in cap space now next year. I don't know if I can necessarily say that fits to me as like pushing the chips in and we don't care about. They're going to have a crazy offseason next year with all kinds of acquisitions. They're taking a year off and hoping Aaron Rodgers keeps them competitive. That's what it sounds like to me. And, okay, that makes you a little bit more okay with getting some old players that aren't necessarily part of your future.
It doesn't make me feel any better about it.
It doesn't make me feel good about the 2025 Steelers. No, I still think that there's a real chance that team goes third, maybe even fourth in their division. But, I would be shocked if they were better than third, to be honest. But I don't know if all in is the right word. I think the word you're looking for is bad. This is a disaster. Aaron Rodgers is cooked. Okay. We all saw him in the Jets. Maybe you didn't. Maybe you didn't watch any Jets games. I can't blame you. Okay. I watched a few Jets games. Nope. It's not good. Ask John Burko. Okay. It's not good anymore. They went from George Pickens to DK Metcalf. You can debate on if that was better or worse, but I kind of see them as a similar tier.
That's the okay move. That's the move I don't mind. If we're
it's fine.
That move lines up fine. He's young.
By the way, acquired an extra third in the process, so they're still amassing more assets. They're ready to make a huge move for a quarterback next year. They lost a ton of pieces, and now you're losing a superstar on your defensive back end so that you can like slightly repair an absolutely devastatingly bad cornerback room. This is, it's geriatric Darius Slay, geriatric Jalen Ramsey.
And you were positioned like it's an elite quarterback room. Luke, everyone's freaking out. Look at this quarterback room.
I like Joey Porter a lot. If you didn't do those two guys, you'd be like throwing in Corey Trice. Like it was really, really, really bad. Now I guess I get it. But like, what I just don't understand what on this team is supposed to be this like super exciting contender that's like all in. To me, I see a team that's going to win 5 games and then have a crazy offseason where they have a ton of turnover. I see the team on the precipice of a rebuild and there's nothing they can do about that. Okay. Everybody got old. Time comes.
But that's my issue. That's my issue with what they're doing right. If internally their goal is, hey, we have a bunch of cap space next year. We have a bunch of draft picks. We're going to make our move for our quarterback next year. Then why did you get rid of people this year who could fit the timeline of that quarterback?
I hate it. Like, why did you get rid of Minka Fitzpatrick? He should be part of that rebuild.
He is part of that timeline. Yes, that's where, look, I'll admit, I am higher on the Steelers than most people are. I still think that they can be competitive and things could break right for them this year. But if your plan is what you said and you want to, basically you're just kind of kicking it down the road, a secret tank this year with Aaron Rodgers so you can be ready for next year, you don't get rid of your young safety for Jalen Ramsey. You don't trade for Jonnu Smith, who's 30 years old again. I think Pat Freiermuth is better than Jonnu Smith. What are we doing? So I guess just like, I'll say this is a 1-year version of going all in because the future capital is still in line. But if your plan is what you said it was, which I think is what it should be for the Steelers to find their QB of the future next year, which is ultimately what would really solve all of their problems, is to find their next Ben Roethlisberger. If that's the plan, why are you swapping out younger pieces? Like, why are you giving Jonnu Smith opportunities over Darnell Washington? Like, I know that Jonnu Smith is better, but like, who can actually be with your young quarterback in a few years? It's not Jonnu Smith. It's not. So those are moves that are solely about winning in 2025 that sacrifice opportunity costs in the future. So maybe it's not all in per se, but they're definitely sacrificing future opportunities for 2025, which doesn't make sense if their goal is to do a secret tank with Aaron Rodgers.
Maybe this is a semantic thing to me, but I cannot in good faith call a team all in when they are going to have a ton of resources next year. Isn't like part of going all in, isn't the whole point of going all in, meaning that you are like, you're going to have to like sit out? They're sitting out now. Maybe they were all in before. Now they're doing their timeout. They're in their penalty box now. They don't exist. Because they are old and because they don't have the iteration of the Steelers that we're going to come to get to know over the rest of this decade does not exist yet. Right now, it's all liquid assets. It's all cap space and draft picks that are going to be spent on people that will become synonymous with the Steelers before. We don't know who those are. Right now, they are treading water. They're in like limbo. That's what it is to me. I can't call a team all in until they actually do the all in thing. You're just describing a team that is old and on the precipice of a rebuild.
And got older. They got older.
Yeah,
to me, getting older for players that are better, that is what going all in is. It's sacred. And maybe the draft picks and the money aren't being sacrificed, but again, opportunity costs. Well, hey, again, whether it was smart or dumb.
Fitzpatrick and you're worse at quarterback, okay?
Yeah. Well, I totally disagree with you there. We could argue for an hour.
We could.
Aaron Rodgers,
you're going to get more.
Every year of his life
last year.
Aaron Rodgers has been better than Aaron Rodgers every year of his life. Every year that they've ever been living at the same time on Earth, Aaron Rodgers
was better than Russell Wilson last year.
Absolutely, he was better than Russell Wilson last year. Yeah, if you switch those two teams and you put Rodgers on the Steelers are a significantly better team with Aaron Rodgers.
Ooh, I think so much more of the Jets with Aaron Rodgers.
Aaron Rodgers has never been worse than Russell Wilson at any time in his life. There's never been a year of Aaron Rodgers' life where he was worse than Russell Wilson. So I refuse.
Aaron Rodgers personally torpedoed the Jets. It was so his fault that, and I don't know.
I'm out on that. I don't know. I hate their coaching staff, their organization.
Receiver as good as Garrett Wilson.
You can't blame Aaron Rodgers for the Jets being bad when the Jets have been bad for 50 years.
I absolutely can, and I will.
It's Nathaniel Hackett and the people in charge of hiring terrible coaches.
Whatever transpired in a hotel suite in London, in New York, that torpedoed their season, you will never convince me that Aaron Rodgers did not personally have a lot to do with that. And if Russell Wilson was the one in the Jets, they could have been
just as bad. Here's all I know:
they could have been
Aaron Rodgers
fine.
with good organization, Aaron Rodgers good. Aaron Rodgers with bad organization, Aaron Rodgers bad. So we'll see if that math equation continues. Now we can both agree on one thing: the Steelers will be worse this year if they trade J.J. Watt. And I'm not 100%. I keep doing that, don't I? I just got J.J. on the brain, but regardless,
look, decades of it happens.
Yeah, if they do that, if they do trade TJ Watt, not JJ, TJ Watt, they would be insane, but there are plenty of teams that would line up to do it. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Summer sports are in full swing, whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the greens, or high-stakes soccer action. FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburn at the beach. Look, FanDuel has new daily promotions all the time with fresh ways and fun ways to bet. Easy to use, fast payouts. It makes every regular season game feel like a must-watch event. If you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, Luke, let's continue today's edition of Locked On NFL. We obviously debated the Pittsburgh Steelers, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, everything we could. And we're forced, obviously, to get in a little break there for the ads. But back to the Steelers, because that might not even be the craziest thing that happened yesterday. The craziest thing to me is this conversation about TJ Watt and what he wants. And as a refresher of what's going on with TJ Watt, not JJ Watt, we go back to my friend Chris Carter from Locked On Steelers.
If you're needing a refresher, currently the situation is TJ Watt is on the final year of his current deal. So the Steelers typically would want to sign him to a future contract. Right now, he has a $30.4 million cap hit against the Steelers. Myles Garrett earlier this offseason signed a new deal that made him a $40 million per year on average signee for the Cleveland Browns. TJ Watt ultimately probably wants something along that lines, probably a little bit higher, 41, 42, maybe $43 million on average per year. And there are some people who feel like that is way too much money to be spending on a edge rusher in his early 30s. But I've been pointing out, Alan Saunders has pointed out, Nick Farabaugh, several of our guests have pointed out, TJ Watt is still one of the best defensive players in the NFL. And that number that you hear when you hear it go 40 plus million, it's not the same kind of what 40 plus million meant even just a couple years ago because of how much the NFL's salary cap has skyrocketed. That's what $40 million today is like $28.5 million about 5 years ago. And for the reason I said that, that's the average amount of money per year that TJ Watt got back then. And so when it comes to salary cap space, it's still taking up around 14 to 15% of a team's salary cap, which is perfectly fine if you're keeping a premier edge rusher, which is what TJ Watt still is in today's NFL.
Now, I've said this enough on this program that I'll just say what I got to say and pass it to you, but the Steelers would be insane to do this. If you're going to go out and give DK Metcalf $150 million and trade for him, you're going to go out and trade for Jalen Ramsey, give him more money. You're going to give Jonnu Smith a $12 million extension. You're going to pay Aaron Rodgers. Like, if you don't pay TJ Watt, who has actually been the foundation of your franchise and remains the best player on your team, you're insane.
Look, this is where I think what we've been talking about exactly comes into conflict, because the question becomes, are the Steelers walking into the season expecting to be a Super Bowl contender, or are they walking into the season?
I think the answer is yes. I think the answer is yes. That's why they traded for Jalen Ramsey and Jonnu Smith. You don't trade for Jalen Ramsey and Jonnu Smith if you don't think you're a contender. You don't do that.
But do you give up Minkah Fitzpatrick because he's not going to be part of your long-term plans?
Yes, because
so they don't care?
You're not worried about long-term plans because you think you can win now. That's why you trade for an older, more expensive player who's not a part of your long-term core, because you think you can win right away. This goes back to my thought.
Are you worried about replacing?
That's an all-in move. That's a win now move.
Aren't you worried about replacing?
Let's say win now. You don't want to say all-in. We've been fighting over the all-in thing.
I don't want to say win now either. That's the whole point I'm making.
Jalen Ramsey is a win now trade.
Thornhill now instead of Minkah Fitzpatrick. You did that in your Super Bowl season? I don't think so, Tim. I don't buy it. I think
you don't trade for older, more expensive players if you don't think it's going to make you better right now.
No, you do.
There's no easy to get rid of. That's better later.
Because it's easy to move on from them afterwards. Here's what I'm trying to say about the Steelers. The Steelers, they don't respect the tank, right? I respect that about them. They never want to go into a season and be a 3-win season. I think if they didn't go out and do all this, that's what they have. Right? If they didn't go do all these older, expensive players, they're getting short-term players. They want 1-year deals. Right. You know who signs 1-year deals? Guys over 30. They want 1-year deals.
Now moves.
Survive now. That's what it is. It's please just give us an 8-win season that we can sort of forget about. That isn't the worst season in Steelers history.
If you want to survive, you go buy a pound of ground beef, not a ribeye.
Okay, well, who's a ribeye at this point in their career?
I'm not talking about the skill level.
Aaron Rodgers is a $10 million quarterback. That's why.
$15 million for Minkah Fitzpatrick at his age versus $26 million for Jalen Ramsey at this age. That is a ground beef to ribeye upgrade for the Steelers.
Didn't the Dolphins take most of that money on?
No.
I believe in the trade, the Dolphins took most. I thought I saw that. That is important.
They're taking some money. I think it was like $7 million of the money.
Is that what it is? So I get to relate this to TJ Watt. It's kind of the same thing to me. So if I'm trying to put myself in the mind of the Steelers, and they've made the determination that Minkah Fitzpatrick is not part of their long-term plans. Otherwise, they never would have done this. An insane determination that we can be should be very critical of. Yes. What in God's name are you doing?
What?
Like,
I heard they want to change schematically, like Minkah is at his best as a deep free safety, and they want to be more scheme varied. Yeah, so they want someone with a more diverse skill set. It's a stupid reason, but that's what they're saying.
I'm sorry, Steelers. Like we all just need to close our eyes and not pay attention to you, but we can't because the most attention-seeking man in the world is the second or third most is on your team.
Mike Tomlin? You mean Aaron Rodgers? Oh, okay, never mind.
But the determination now is TJ Watt part of your long-term plans? He's 31.
How can Jalen Ramsey be a part of the plan and TJ Watt not be? Like, that's where
the rest of the
Jalen off a cliff.
Jalen Ramsey's getting cut after this season. I mean, come on. There's no guaranteed money left on his deal. He's on a functional.
You really think
deal.
that? You think that he's only going to be on the Steelers this year?
He does. Yeah, he doesn't have a guaranteed dollar left on his deal unless something changed in the last 24 hours that I missed. He has no guaranteed money left.
I understand that,
casualty.
But then they would be admitting that they're
horrific contract. It's a horrible contract.
But then once again, they're trading for. So you're basically saying that Minkah Fitzpatrick was a salary dump. Is how you view it. Is that you think that the Steelers are just trying to dump salary and get off money long term easier, and they don't actually think that Jalen Ramsey makes them better this year?
No, I don't know quite how you heard that. I am saying that they are making determinations about who is going to be on the team in like 2 or 3 years, right? I don't think Jalen Ramsey is. I don't think, and apparently Minkah Fitzpatrick isn't either. Jalen Ramsey is just about this year to me. It's just about bringing him in to shore up a Corey Trice-sized hole in your roster.
And now they have a Minkah Fitzpatrick-sized one.
Creating a new hole in your roster, which is a little bewildering to me. But they wouldn't be willing to do that if they viewed Minkah Fitzpatrick as a long-term part of the Pittsburgh Steelers in 27, 28, right?
Yes.
So do they view 34-year-old TJ Watt as a part of the Steelers in 27 or 28?
Is TJ Watt really 34 years old?
No, he's 31. He's going to be 34 in the year that they're thinking about.
Yeah,
I'm saying that they're thinking about future years more than they are thinking about this year, which is why I'm pushing back on you on the all-in and win now stuff. I
disagree with that so much.
I just can't look at losing Minkah Fitzpatrick and gaining Jalen Ramsey and say with a straight face that makes the Steelers better. And I don't care about Jonnu Smith. He's tight end 2 there.
Yeah. I agree with you there. I don't think it makes them better. I think they think it makes them better.
Maybe I'm just giving them more credit on how
that's what I think.
Okay, you think that they got Jalen Ramsey thinking he's better than Minkah Fitzpatrick, and they're just that wrong. And I just think that's silly.
100%. I 100% think that's where they think Aaron Rodgers is better than Russell Wilson. They think that Jalen Ramsey is better than Minkah Fitzpatrick. These aren't moves as like, oh, it'll be easier to have flexibility in the future. But no, these are, we're going all in to win a championship this year. That's what they're saying behind closed doors when they make these moves. Not, oh, we could get off of Ramsey after this year and preserve our future flexibility. That's smart, Luke, but I'm sorry, I don't think that that's the true motivation here. So the Steelers' motivation for these moves.
There's a tough balance in Pittsburgh because there is a pressure to never just like fall apart, right?
Right. All right. Let's do this though. If TJ Watt gets traded, got to give the people what we said we were going to give them. If TJ Watt does get traded, I'm going to throw some teams at you. We just continued arguing about the Steelers' motivations. I love it. It's great content, Luke. We're doing the right thing here, but
okay. So every team in the NFC North but the Vikings. We had the same discussion about Trey Hendrickson and the
Eagles always have to be involved because they can trade for everyone.
Yeah, bring somebody opposite Montez Sweat. The Packers desperately need a pass rush.
Yes.
The Lions having him next to Aiden Hutchinson would be kind of fun, although stylistically they're similar enough where I'm not sure if that's if I like that as much as I like Trey Hendrickson for them. Where like you kind of want somebody that's a little more power. If you have 2 finesse guys, you can kind of get hard countered by the wrong pair of tackles. So I don't know if I love it as much for the Lions, but they're still very much a candidate.
That does make sense. I hear you there. I saw an interesting team get mentioned, the Seattle Seahawks. So they got DeMarcus Lawrence, and I like Boye Mafe and stuff, but they don't have like a bona fide edge rusher like that. And with the defense that they have over there, that could put them over the top. And they're kind of a team that they have salary cap space in the next few years, so they could probably afford something like that. Out of all of those teams that we just talked about, if he did get traded, who would you want to see TJ Watt go to?
The Seahawks is a fun idea. I still think it's the Raiders. I think putting him next to Max Crosby just rules really, really, really hard.
Yeah.
Like this, I just want to see a really cool edge duo in Vegas because I think Vegas is so overdue for something really fun and exciting. They've had all these also ran like 7-win teams. Maybe, yeah, that could be it. But something that like defines them, and a really, really sick edge duo can do more for that than just Max Crosby can on his own.
No, I'm 100% with you on that. If there was any AFC team, that does make sense. It would have to be the other side of the country, a different division, all of that. But all of this stuff we have talked about may not be the most unlikely thing we have talked about today because, folks, Darren Waller is back in the NFL, baby.
Jesus Christ.
All right, Luke, let's cap off today's edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. Do want to thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On NFL Scouting. As training camp gets closer, moves are being made. Host Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. And speaking of my guy Kyle Krabs, also hosts Locked On Dolphins, and it has been a crazy week for Kyle. We'll hear what he had to say about this Darren Waller move, folks. He's back.
Just when you thought the Miami Dolphins week could not get any crazier, they go and do something like this and totally redeem themselves. The Dolphins trading for formerly retired tight end Darren Waller to replace Jonnu Smith. Waller, represented by Drew Rosenhaus, who was also the agent who represented former Miami Dolphins tight end Jonnu Smith. It's a fascinating twist to know that the Dolphins, in their negotiations with Jonnu Smith, may have known they had the Waller move in their back pocket. What can they realistically expect to get from a formerly retired Darren Waller? Well, it's a big-time mystery, but it is one that will be fun to see play out as the Dolphins traded a future conditional 6th-round draft choice to New York for Darren Waller's rights for Waller and a 2027 7th-round draft choice. On an adjusted contract, Waller is set to make 1 year up to $5 million for his services as the Dolphins try to replace Jonnu Smith.
So what I saw was, and the details are a little murky, it's a 6th conditional in 2027 for a 7th in 2026. It's basically a late round pick swap for Darren Waller, who, man, that rap career must have not been going great. That's all I can say about that. You know what? I will say this, all jokes aside, Darren Waller is not the worst professional or not the worst athlete rapper I've ever heard. Anthony Richardson, yikes. Stop. Let it go. But Darren Waller was okay regardless.
From the rap conversation.
He's certainly,
nobody needs to know my thoughts on that.
Yeah, he's certainly a better football player than he is a rapper, though. I will give him that. I think that the Dolphins kind of need to look themselves in the mirror and let this be a transition year. They need to kind of reset everything in Miami. So losing Jonnu Smith, who they should not have paid $12 million to, that's a smart move by Miami to go ahead getting Minkah Fitzpatrick back, a better, younger, cheaper player. I love that for Miami. I didn't want them to go out and actually make some kind of big, like for Kyle Pitts or Cole Kmet or Michael Mayer or anything like that. I actually think this is a really cheap, effective way to fill a spot and not really give up anything in the future. I don't have a problem with this. I just don't think it matters. The Dolphins are not who people thought they could be a couple of years ago.
I have two major critiques of the Dolphins, and this whole week has leaned harder into both of them. One is that they are a mostly finesse team that wants to bomb the ball deep all the time, right? Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, go be that team. And that they don't have, it's not that that style of football can't work in a cold weather game. Sure it can. We've seen plenty, but it's that you have to have other pitches. You have to have other clubs in the bag. And I don't think that the Dolphins have created enough of a diversity offensively to withstand the wrong kind of defense or the wrong kind of elements. Getting Darren Waller and replacing Jonnu Smith with Darren Waller leans further into that identity. Darren Waller has never been like a major blocking type. He has been a move tight end, like the move tight end. He was a receiver to start his career even. So you're just going deeper into that. You're just going deeper into the hole that has held you back this whole time. My second critique of the Dolphins is a little bit more difficult to pin down, but Kyle Krabs gave us something that kind of speaks to it, which is that the Dolphins always overvalue the convenience of something. I don't know if they're necessarily no stone unturned enough. Hey, we want to get rid of Jalen Ramsey. Well, the team that wants Jalen Ramsey has this Minkah Fitzpatrick guy. We can go, oh, hey, what a convenient way to get this guy.
We know him.
Hey, Jonnu Smith, we're going to get rid of that. We don't like that deal anymore. We're going to try to get rid of that as part of this trade. Oh, how convenient. Oh, hey, his agent has this great idea for us. How convenient.
Yep.
And what it leads to is this lack of options. You are not casting a wide enough net, and you end up with tight end rooms that read Darren Waller, Pharaoh Brown. You end up with cornerback rooms that are going to unironically start Storm Duck. You have major problems in Miami. There is a rot in Miami that is going to undo them sooner rather than later, and absolutely no urgency to fix it at all. Please enjoy 7 wins, 3rd place in the AFC East, and maybe a mass firing at the end of the year.
I think that the problem is they are the most agent-influenced team in the NFL. Drew Rosenhaus down there in Miami there's a long history of Drew Rosenhaus working with the Dolphins. I think that the Dolphins, more than any other organization, might be more controlled, or you don't want to say controlled, but again, influenced by what agents say. I think you might be onto something with that theory of they only went ahead and traded Jonnu Smith because Darren Waller's agent was like, hey, if you let my
it's like
other
bird in
client go
hand
get
is
paid,
worth two in the bush, but like taken to an extreme, It's like, there's almost a fear to it of, well, if we pass up on this, will we ever get a tight end? I don't know.
It's like if you only went to the restaurants in your neighborhood when there was a really good restaurant in the neighborhood over, but you just didn't want to drive. It was just so convenient. So really, you're just missing out on a great restaurant because you're just too lazy to get out of your comfort zone. You might be onto something there, but I think that I have been saying throughout this all season, the Dolphins do need to wipe it clean. You really can't wipe Tua clean at this point with the money that he's making. You got to try to get somebody else in there at GM instead of Chris Greer. I would move on from Mike McDaniel too and try to look for a different path forward than this version of the team, which I think is already done. They can lie to themselves if they want, but this version of the Miami Dolphins is done. And I think a lot of it has to do with, and this is probably building on the agent influence part, Miami is all about mercenaries. You go get Tyreek Hill. You go get Jalen Ramsey. You know what I mean? They don't have a lot of guys who are like Miami Dolphins. You know what I mean? Like I was.
Yeah, like who's there?
I was drafted here. I was developed here. I was paid here. This is my team. I care. If you're Tyreek Hill, why would you care about the culture of the Miami Dolphins? You weren't around for any of that. You just got brought in as a mercenary. So I think Miami's approach in general, we might be tying a bunch of things together in one package right here, like their mercenary acquisitions, being influenced by agents, not having a good foundation. Like all of that's probably related.
They're a team, I think, in total denial of what's actually been holding them back. Yes. However, I've been so negative on this show. I want to end with something positive. I think the answer to your question of who is the core of the Dolphins in the future is their defensive line. And I think that the defensive line also holds the answer to kind of giving them a different style. Like have a really physical defensive line that can just beat some offense up and win you a game where your offense falls apart and you can win a game 17-7. I want to see that from the Dolphins, but like, they have drafted so many of my favorite little pet guys on D-line. Kenneth Grant, Chop Robinson, even Jalen Phillips a couple years ago. I love the way, and by the way, Bradley Chubb, not for nothing. I love the way that their D-line is constructed, and I think those guys, and I love that most of it is homegrown, right? Jalen Phillips drafted, Chop Robinson drafted, Kenneth Grant drafted. If eventually you get to a world where those are your 3 core defensive linemen, I could definitely see you showing up to games against the Buffalo Bills and having them say, all right, now we got to protect Josh Allen from this D-line, and that being the future of the Dolphins. That's a long way away, and all those players are young, so there's time. Whatever the Dolphins are right now, I'm so with you. It is not working, and I think it's been dead for a while. I just don't see enough changing in that organization for me to project that they're suddenly going to be the Super Bowl contender that they were for 2 months in 2022. That was a flash in the pan that just doesn't sustain. We just know it's like the Arizona Cardinals. But the future of the Dolphins, the future core pillar of the Dolphins might already be in the building. That's something.
That is something for them. I like Kenneth Grant as a player. I think they should have taken Jahdae Barron. I think that was a massive mistake by them. Just positional value alone.
What do you mean they surplus? They just traded a quarterback away.
I know. It would have worked out so perfect. But anyway, regardless, that is going to do it for today's edition of Locked On NFL. It was an insane edition of Locked On NFL. Don't worry, folks. Me and Luke do like each other. We just disagree on the Steelers, and that's perfectly fine.
This is great. This is my most fun I've had to Locked On Vikings in some time, or Locked On NFL in some time.
Let's make it an hour, Ross. Let's make it an hour. Anyway, that's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On NFL. I am your host, the Madman, Tyler Rowland, for my co-host, the Brain, Luke Braun. As we tell you every episode, thanks for tuning in, and stay safe out there.